Airbus A320 family.
The Airbus A320 family consists of short to medium-range, narrow-body, commercial passenger jet airliners manufactured by Airbus. The family includes the A318, A319, A320 and A321, and the ACJ business jet. The A320s are also named A320ceo after the introduction of the A320neo. Final assembly of the family in Europe takes place in Toulouse, France, and Hamburg, Germany. Starting in 2009, a plant in Tianjin, China, has also been producing aircraft for Chinese airlines. In April 2013, Airbus started construction of a new production facility for the A319, A320, and A321 variants in Mobile, Alabama. The aircraft family can accommodate up to 220 passengers and has a range of 3,100 to 12,000 kilometers, depending on model. The first member of the A320 family, the A320, was launched in March 1984, first flew on February 22, 1987, and was first delivered in 1988. The family was soon extended to include the A321, first delivered 1994, the A319, 1996, and the A318, 2003. The A320 family pioneered the use of digital fly-by-wire flight control systems, as well as side-stick controls, in commercial aircraft. There has been a continuous improvement process since introduction. In December 2010, Airbus officially launched the new generation of the A320 family with the A320neo new engine option. The new generation offers a choice of the CFM International LEAP-X or Pratt & Whitney Palais 1000G, combined with airframe improvements and the addition of winglets, named Sharklets by Airbus. The aircraft will deliver fuel savings of up to 15%. Virgin America will be the launch customer for the aircraft in spring of 2016. As of December 2011, a total of 1,196 A320neo family aircraft have been ordered by 21 airlines, making it the fastest ever selling commercial aircraft. As of July 2013, a total of 5,677 Airbus A320 family aircraft have been delivered, of which 5,481 are in service. In addition, another 4,135 airliners are on firm order. It ranked as the world's fastest-selling jet airliner family according to records from 2005 to 2007, and is the best-selling single-generation aircraft program. The A320 family has proved popular with airlines including low-cost carriers such as EasyJet, who purchased A319s and A320s to replace its Boeing 737 fleet. The aircraft family has competed directly with the Boeing 737, 717, 757, and the McDonnell Douglas MD-80/MD-90.
Development. Origins.
When Airbus designed the Airbus A300 during the late 1960s and early 1970s, it envisaged a broad family of airliners with which to compete against Boeing and Douglas, two established U.S. aerospace manufacturers. From the moment of formation, Airbus had begun studies into derivatives of the Airbus A300B in support of this long-term goal. Prior to the service introduction of the first Airbus airliners, engineers within Airbus had identified 9 possible variations of the A300 known as A300B1 to B9. A 10th variation, conceived in 1973, later the first to be constructed, was designated the A300B10. It was a smaller aircraft which would be developed into the long-range Airbus A310. Airbus then focused its efforts on the single-aisle market, which was dominated by the Boeing 737 and McDonnell Douglas DC-9. Plans from a number of European aircraft manufacturers called for a successor to the relatively successful BAC-111, and to replace the Boeing 737-200 and DC-9. Germany's MBB, Messerschmitt Bölkow Bloch, British Aircraft Corporation, Sweden's Saab and CASA worked on the Europlane, a 180 to 200-seat aircraft. it was abandoned after intruding on A310 specifications. VFW Fokker, Dornier and Hawker Siddeley worked on a number of 150-seat designs. Alongside Bauer, which at the time was not part of Airbus, were MBB, Fokker VFW and Airbus A320. The design within the JET study that was carried forward was the JET2, 163 passengers, which then became the Airbus SA1/2/3 series, single aisle, before settling on the A320 name for its launch in 1984. The Hawker Siddeley team had previously produced a design called the HS-134 Airbus in 1965, an evolution of the HS-121, formerly DH-121, Trident, which shared much of the general arrangement of the later JET-3 study design. The name Airbus at the time referred to a BEA requirement, rather than to the later international program.
Design effort.
A new program was initiated subsequently, called Joint European Transport, JET. This was set up in June 1977, and was based at the then British Aerospace, formerly Vickers, site in Weybridge, Surrey, UK. Although the members were all of Airbus partners, they regarded the project as a separate collaboration from Airbus. This project was considered the forerunner of Airbus A320, encompassing the 130 to 188-seat market, powered by two CFM56s. It would have a cruise speed of Mach 0.84, faster than Boeing 737. The program was later transferred to Airbus, leading up to the creation of the single-aisle SA studies in 1980, led by former leader of JET program, Derek Brown. The group looked at three different variants, covering the 125 to 180-seat market, called SA1, SA2 and SA3. Although unaware at the time, the consortium was producing the blueprints for the A319, A320 and A321, respectively. The single-aisle program created divisions within Airbus about whether to design a shorter range twin jet than a longer range quadjet wanted by the West Germans, particularly Lufthansa. However, works proceeded, and the German carrier would eventually order the twin jet. In February 1981, the project was redesignated A320, with efforts focused on the former SA2. During the year, Airbus worked with Delta Airlines on a 150-seat aircraft envisioned and required by the airline. The A320 would carry 150 passengers 1,860 nautical miles, 3,440 kilometers, using fuel from wing fuel tanks only. The -200 had more fuel through the activation of center fuel tank, increasing fuel capacity from 3,429 imperial gallons, 15,590 L, to 5,154 imp.gal, 23,430 L, enabling flights with a distance of 2,815 mi, 5,280 kilometers. The aircraft will measure 118 feet 3 inches, 36.04 m, and 128 feet 9 inches, 39.24 m, respectively. Airbus then had to decide on a cross-section for the A320. It considered a fuselage diameter of the Boeing 707 and 727, or do something better. It eventually settled on a wider diameter, with the internal width at 3.7 m, 12 feet 2 in, compared to 3.45 m, 11 feet 4 in, of the Boeing aircraft. Although heavier, this specification allowed the aircraft to compete more effectively with the 737. The A320 wing went through several stages of design, finally settling on 33.91 m, 111 feet 3 inches. It is long and thin, offering better aerodynamic efficiency because of the higher aspect ratio than the competition, namely the 737 and MD-80. With the A320, Airbus made a controversial decision. For the first time, digital fly-by-wire, FBW, flight control system would be incorporated into a commercial airliner, although it was previously successfully proven on military fighter aircraft, such as the Vought F-8 Crusader. Aside from associated reduction in weight and cost, This system would provide flight envelope protection. The pilot, in essence, places inputs into the flight control computer, which interprets these actions and moves the flight control surfaces. FBW also allows Airbus to make flying characteristics similar to later models, such as the Airbus A330, A340, A380, and the upcoming A350. It would feature side-stick control for the first time on a commercial aircraft. Bernard Ziegler, son of the former Airbus CEO, Henri Ziegler, was the initiator of the aircraft's revolutionary fly-by-wire flight controls with side-stick cockpit controller and full-glass cockpit. He successfully convinced aviation authorities of the concept's validity. During the A320 development program, Airbus considered propfan technology, backed by Lufthansa. At the time unproven, it was essentially a fan placed outside the engine nacelle, offering speed of a turbofan at turboprops economics. Eventually, Airbus stuck with turbofans. Power on the A320 would be supplied by two CFM56-5A1s rated at 25,000 pound forces, 112.5 kilonewtons. It was the only available engine at launch until the IAEV 2500, offered by International Aero Engines, a group composed of Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, Japanese Aero Engines Corporation, Fiat and MTU Aero Engines, MTU. The first V2500 variant, the V2500A1, has a thrust output of 25,000 pounds force, 110 kilonewtons, hence the name, and is marginally more efficient than the CFM56, with specific fuel consumption at 0.560, compared to 0.591 of the CFM56.
Production and testing.
Production of the A320 was postponed for a number of reasons. From the start, the UK, France and West Germany wanted the responsibility of final assembly and the associated duties. These disputes were known as work-share arguments, driven by, apart from money, prestige. The Germans requested an increased work share of 40%, while the British wanted the major responsibilities to be swapped around to give partners production and research and development, R&D, experience. In the end, British work share was increased from that of the two previous Airbuses, while virtually no changes took place for the other three major member countries. Another contributing factor was launch aid, or subsidies, for the aerospace companies from their respective governments. France was willing to commit, while the Germans were more cautious. The UK government, on the other hand, was unwilling to provide funding for the tooling requested by British Aerospace, BAE. Estimated at £250 million, it was postponed for 3 years until March 1, 1984, when an announcement was made about the deal between government and manufacturer. The agreement dictates that £50 million would be paid whether the A320 would fly or not, while the rest would be paid as a levy of each aircraft sold. The program was launched the following day off the back of orders for 96 aircraft from 5 customers. Air France was the first customer for the type, having placed an order for 50 aircraft, split evenly between firm and options, between 16 A320-100s and 34-200s. However, British Caledonian was the first to place a firm order for 7 back in October 1983. Cyprus Airways became the first to place order for V2500-powered A320s in November 1984. Pan Am also selected V2500 when it requested 16 firm orders and 34 options in January 1985, as did Air Nex Adria. The most significant order was to come, when Northwest Airlines placed an order for 100 A320s in October 1986, later confirmed at the 1990 Farnborough Air Show, powered by CFM56 engines. The first Airbus A320 was rolled out on February 14, 1987 amid dry ice and laser beams as part of a spectacular unveiling ceremony. A number of high-profile figures were present, including the Prince and Princess of Wales. The first flight came on February 22, during which the aircraft flew for 3 hours 23 minutes. The flight marked the beginning of a flight test program involving 1,200 airborne hours on 530 flights. European Joint Aviation Authorities, JAA, certification was received on February 26, 1988. The first A320 delivery was to Air France on March 26, 1988. On June 26, 1988, a chartered Air France Airbus A320-111, FGFKC, crashed into trees at the end of runway at Mulhouse-Hechem Airport. 3 out of 130 passengers were killed. Another A320, flown by Indian Airlines, crash-landed short of the airport runway in Bangalore. The ensuing fire contributed to the casualty count of 92, out of 146 on board. The press and media later questioned the fly-by-wire flight control system. Subsequent investigations by Commission of Inquiry found no malfunction of the aircraft or its equipment which could have contributed towards a reduction in safety or an increase in the crew's workload during the final flight phase. The response of the engines was normal and in compliance with certification requirement. As of 2009, Airbus required about 8 months to build an A320. Components from various Airbus plants are transported to the final assembly plant at Hamburg Finkenwerder for the A318 per A319 per A321 and at Toulouse Blagnac for the A320. Nearly all assemblies are moved using Airbus A300-600 St. Beluga outsized transporters. Airbus A320s sold to Chinese airlines scheduled for delivery between 2009 and 2012 are being assembled in Tianjin, China.
Growing the family.
The first derivative of the A320 is the Airbus A321, also known as the stretched A320, A320-500 and A325. Its launch came on November 24, 1988 after commitments for 183 aircraft from 10 customers were secured. The aircraft would be a minimum change derivative, apart from a number of minor modifications to the wing and the fuselage stretch itself. The wing would incorporate double-slotted flaps and minor trailing edge modifications, increasing the wing area from 124 m2, 1,330 square feet, to 128 m2, 1,380 square feet. The fuselage was lengthened by 4 plugs, 2 ahead and 2 behind the wings, giving the A321 an overall length of 6.94 meters, 22 feet 9 in, longer than the A320. The length increase required the overwing exits of the A320 to be enlarged and repositioned in front of and behind the wings. The center fuselage and undercarriage were reinforced to accommodate the increase in maximum takeoff weight, MTOW, of 9,600 kilograms, 21,200 pounds, taking the MTOW to 83,000 kilograms, 183,000 pounds. Final assembly for the A321 would be, as a first for any Airbus, carried out in Germany, then West Germany. This came after a dispute between the French, who claimed the move would incur $150 million, EU $135 million in unnecessary expenditure associated with the new plant, and the Germans, arguing it would be more productive for Airbus in the long run. The second production line was located at Hamburg, which would also produce the smaller Airbus A319 and A318. For the first time, Airbus entered the bond market, through which it raised $480 million, EU $475 million to finance development costs. An additional $180 million, EU $175 million was loaned from European Investment Bank and private investors. The maiden flight of the Airbus A321 came on March 11, 1993, when the prototype, registration FWWIA, flew with IAEV 2500 engines. The second prototype, equipped with CFM56-5B turbofans, flew in May. Lufthansa and Alitalia were the first to order the stretched Airbuses, with 20 and 40 aircraft requested, respectively. The first of Lufthansa's V2500A5-powered A321s arrived on January 27, 1994, while Alitalia received its first CFM56-5B-powered aircraft on March 22.
Shrinking the A320.
The A319 is the next derivative of the baseline A320. The design is a shrink with its origins in the 130 to 140-seat SA-1, part of the single-aisle studies. The SA-1 was shelved as the consortium concentrated on its bigger siblings. After healthy sales of the A320 per A321, Airbus refocused on what was then known as the A320 M7, meaning A320-7 fuselage frames. It would provide direct competition for the Boeing 737-300/-700. The shrink was achieved through the removal of 4 fuselage frames 4 and 3 aft the wing, cutting the overall length by 3.73 meters, 12 feet 3 in. Consequently, the number of overwing exits were reduced from 4 to 2. The bulk cargo door was replaced by an aft container door, which can take in reduced height LD-3-46 containers. Minor software programming were made to accommodate the different handling characteristics. Otherwise the aircraft is largely unchanged. Power is provided by the CFM56-5A or V2500A5, derated to 98 kilonewtons, 22,000 pound forces, with option for 105 kilonewtons, 24,000 pound forces, thrust. Airbus began offering the new model from May 22, 1992, with the actual launch of the program $275 million, EU $250 million, occurring June 10, 1993. The A319's first customer is ILFC, who signed for 6 aircraft. On March 23, 1995, the first A319 underwent final assembly at Airbus German plant in Hamburg, where the A321s are assembled. It was rolled out on August 24, with the maiden flight the following day. The certification program would take 350 airborne hours involving 2 aircraft. Certification for the CFM56-5B6/2 equipped variant was granted in April 1996, after which qualification for the V2524A5 started the following month. Delivery of the first A319, to Swissair, took place on April 25, 1996, entering service by month's end. In January 1997, an A319 broke a record during a delivery flight by flying 3,588 nautical miles, 6,645 kilometers, the Great Circle route to Winnipeg, Manitoba from Hamburg, in 9 hours 5 minutes. Sales of the A319 would overtake that of the A321, amassing 1,470 order compared to 932. It has proved popular with low-cost airlines such as EasyJet, who has orders for 172, with 172 delivered.
Second shrink.
The A318 was born out of mid-1990 studies between Aviation Industries of China, AVIC, Singapore Technologies Aerospace, Alenia and Airbus on a 95 to 125-seat aircraft project. The program was called the AE31X, and covered the 95-seat AE316 and 115 to 125-seat AE317. The former would have had an overall length of 31.3 meters, 102 feet 8 in, while the AE317 was longer by 3.2 m, 10 feet 6 in, at 34.5 m, 113 feet 2 in. The engines were to be supplied from 2 Rolls-Royce BR715S, CFM56-9s, or the Pratt & Whitney Palais, 6000S. With the MTOW of 53.3 t, 118,000 pounds, for the smaller version and 58 t, 128,000 pounds, for the AE317, the thrust requirement was 77.9 to 84.6 kilonewtons, 17,500 to 19,000 pound forces, and 84.6 to 91.2 kilonewtons, 19,000 to 20,500 pound forces, respectively. Range was settled at 5,200 kilometers, 2,800 mi, and 5,800 kilometers, 3,100 mi, for the high gross weights of both variants. Both share a wingspan of 31.0 m, 101 feet 8 in, and a flight deck similar to that of the A320 family. Costing $2 billion, EU $1.85 billion, to develop, aircraft production to take place in China. Simultaneously, Airbus was developing Airbus A318. In early 1998, Airbus revealed its considerations of designing a 100-seat aircraft based on the A320. The A321X project was terminated by September 1998, after which Airbus officially announced an aircraft of its own, the A318, at that year's Farnborough Air Show. The aircraft is the smallest product of Airbus's product range, and was developed ironically at the same time as the largest commercial aircraft in history, the Airbus A380. First called A319M5 in as early as March 1995, it was shorter by 0.79 meter, 2 feet 7 in, ahead of the wing and 1.6 meters, 5 feet 3 in, behind. These cuts reduced passenger capacity from 124 on the A319 to 107 passengers in a two-class layout. Range was 5,700 kilometers, 3,100 mi, or 5,950 kilometers, 3,210 mi, with upcoming sharklets. The 107-seater was launched on April 26, 1999 with the options and orders count at 109 aircraft. After 3 years of design, the maiden flight took place at Hamburg on January 15, 2002. Tests on the lead engine, the Pratt & Whitney Palais 6000, revealed worse than expected fuel consumption. Consequently, Pratt & Whitney abandoned the 5-stage high-pressure compressor, HPC, for the MTU-designed 6-stage HPC. The 129 order book for the A318 shrunk to 80 largely because of switches to other A320 family members. After 17 months of flight certification, during which 850 hours and 350 flights were accumulated, JAA certification was obtained for the CFM56-powered variant on May 23, 2003. On July 22, 2003, first delivery for launch customer Frontier Airlines occurred, entering service before the end of the month.
A320 Enhanced Family.
A320 Enhanced Family, or A320E Family, is the working title for a series of improvements to the A320 family. The improvements include engine improvements, aerodynamic refinements, such as adding large curved winglets, sharklets, weight savings, and a new cabin design. In 2006, Airbus tested 3 styles of winglet intended to counteract the wing's induced drag and wingtip vortices more effectively than the previous wingtip fence. The first design type to be tested was developed by Airbus and was based on work done by the Aviator program. The second type of winglet incorporated a more blended design and was designed by Winglet Technology, a company based in Wichita, Kansas. 2 aircraft were used in the flight test evaluation campaign, the prototype A320, which have been retained by Airbus for testing, and a new-build aircraft which was fitted with both types of winglets before it was delivered to JetBlue Airways. Despite the anticipated efficiency gains and development work, Airbus announced that the new winglets will not be offered to customers, claiming that the weight of the modifications required would negate any aerodynamic benefits. Instead, on December 17, 2008, Airbus announced it was to begin flight testing an existing blended winglet design developed by aviation partners as part of an A320 modernization program using the A320 prototype. On November 15, 2009, Airbus announced future additions of sharklets to A320s beginning in 2012 with Air New Zealand. These Airbus winglets, which are 2.4 meters, 7 feet 10 in, tall and weigh 200 kilograms, 440 pounds, would reduce fuel burn by 4% and offer increases in payload of 500 kilograms, 1,100 pounds, or range by 110 mi, 204 kilometers, at the original payload. This corresponds to an annual CO2 reduction of around 700 t, 690 long tons, per aircraft, saving operators $220,000 per aircraft per year. The sharklets are to be manufactured and distributed by Korean Air Aerospace Division. The cabin was fitted to more than 600 aircraft, as of March 2009, since 2007. Airbus claims it offers better luggage storage and a quieter cabin, packaged with a more modern look and feel. Additionally, improved cabin efficiency by a new galley concept, reduced weight, improved ergonomics and food hygiene and recycling requirements. LED ambience lighting is optionally available. Anytime LEDs are used for the passenger service unit, PSU, and passengers can get information with touchscreen displays. Older A320 series aircraft can be updated.
New engine option, A320neo.
Airbus is working on offering a new engine for the A320 known as the new engine option, NEO. The choice for new engines include the CFM International LEAP 1A and the Pratt & Whitney Palais 1100G. Though the new engines will burn 16% less fuel, the actual fuel gain on an A320 installation will be slightly less, since 1 to 2% is typically lost upon installation on an existing aircraft. This means an additional range of 950 km, 510 mi, or 2t, 4,400 pounds, of extra payload. The A320neo will also include some modifications to the wing, mainly the installation of blended winglets called sharklets. Airbus CEO said to be comfortable with the projections of 20% lower maintenance cost for the Pratt & Whitney's Palais 1000G family, compared with today's engines. Airbus is targeting 2016 for the first delivery and plans to deliver 4,000 A320neo over 15 years. Virgin America became the launch customer with a firm order of 30 A320neo aircraft as a part of a 60-aircraft order on January 17, 2011. In January 2011, Indigo reached a tentative agreement with Airbus to order 150 A320neo aircraft along with 30 more A320s. At the 2011 Paris Air Show, Airbus announced firm orders from GECAS, Scandinavian Airlines System, TransAsia Airways, LAN Airlines and Go Air along with major orders from Indian low-cost carrier Indigo for 150 aircraft and Malaysian low-cost carrier AirAsia for 200 A320neo, the largest commercial aviation order at the time. In total, the A320neo received a combined 667 commitments worth $60.9 billion. American Airlines placed an order 130 A320neo airliners on July 20, 2011. By the end of 2011, Airbus had received 1,196 firm orders for the A320neo family, making it the fastest-selling commercial aircraft in history. On March 15, 2013, it was reported that Turkish Airlines had placed a firm order for 82 A320 aircraft with 35 options. The firm order has 25 A321, 4 A320neo, and 53 A321neo airliners.
Design.
The Airbus A320 family are narrow-body, single-aisle aircraft with a retractable tricycle landing gear and are powered by two-wing pylon-mounted turbofan engines.
Airframe.
The Airbus A320 family are low-wing cantilever monoplanes with a conventional tail unit with a single vertical stabilizer and rudder. Wings swept back at 25 degrees, optimized for maximum operating Mach number 0.82, built by British Aerospace, BAE. Compared to other airliners of the same class, the A320 features a wider single-aisle cabin of 155.5 inches, 3.95 m, outside diameter, compared to 148 inches, 3.8 m, of the Boeing 737 and 131.6 inches, 3.34 m, of the Boeing 717, and larger overhead bins. In addition, the aircraft has a cargo hold equipped with large doors to assist in expedient loading and unloading of goods. The Airbus A320 is the first narrow-body airliner to use a significant amount of the structure made from composite material. Its tail assembly made almost entirely of such material by CASA, who also builds the elevators, main landing gear doors, and rear fuselage parts.
Flight deck and avionics.
The A320 was the first civil airliner to include a full digital fly-by-wire flight control system. Its design also included a full glass cockpit rather than the hybrid versions found in previous airliners. Digital head-up displays are available. The A320's flight deck is equipped with Electronic Flight Instrument System, EFIS, with side-stick controllers. At the time of the aircraft's introduction, the behavior of the fly-by-wire system, equipped with full flight envelope protection, was a new experience for many pilots. The A320 features an Electronic Centralized Aircraft Monitor, ECAM, which gives the flight crew information about all the systems of the aircraft. With the exception of the very earliest A320s, most can be upgraded to the latest avionics standards, keeping the aircraft advanced even after 2 decades in service. Early A320 planes used the Intel 80186 and Motorola 68010. In 1988 Intel 80286 family CPUs. The flight management computer contains 6 CPUs, running in 3 logical pairs, with 2.5 MB of memory. Newer Airbus feature LCD, liquid crystal display, units in the flight deck of its A318, A319, A320, and A321 flight decks instead of the original CRT, cathode ray tube, displays. These include the main displays and the backup artificial horizon, which was an analog display prior to this.
Engines.
3 suppliers provide turbofan engines for the A320 series: CFM International with its CFM56, International Aero Engines, offering the V2500, and Pratt & Whitney, whose Pilot 6000 engines are only available for the A318 variant.
Operational history.
The Joint Aviation Authorities, JAA, issued the type certificate for the A320 on February 26, 1988. After entering the markets in March 1988 with Air France and Ansett, the former Australian domestic airline, Airbus then expanded the A320 family rapidly, launching the 185-seat A321 in 1989 and first delivered it in 1994. Launching the 124-seat A319 in 1993 and delivering it in 1996. And launching the 107-seat A318 in 1999 with first deliveries in 2003.
Competition.
The A320 family was developed to compete with the Boeing 737 Classics, 300-400-500, and the McDonnell Douglas MD-80 series, and has since faced challenges from the Boeing 737 Next Generation, 600-700-800-900, and the Boeing 717 during its 2 decades in service. As of 2010, as well as the Boeing 737, the A320 family faces competition from Embraer's E195, to the A318, and the XA is being developed by Bombardier to the A318 per A319. Airbus has delivered 5,895 A320 series aircraft since their certification first delivery in early 1988, with another 4,298 on firm order, as of December 31, 2013. In comparison, Boeing has shipped 7,865 737s since late 1967, with 6,359 of those deliveries since March 1988, and has a further 3,680 on firm order, as of December 31, 2013. Airbus A320 family deliveries, Boeing 737 series deliveries.
Replacement airliner.
Airbus was studying a future replacement for the A320 series, tentatively dubbed NSR, for new short-range aircraft. The follow-on aircraft to replace the A320 was named A30X. Airbus North America President Barry Eccleston states that the earliest the aircraft could be available is 2017. In January 2010, John Lee, Airbus's Chief Operating Officer, Customers, stated that any all-new single-aisle aircraft is unlikely to be constructed before 2024/2025.
Variants. Overview.
The baseline A320 has given rise to a family of aircraft which share a common design but with passenger capacity ranges from 100, on the A318, to 220, on the A321. They compete with the Boeing 737, 757-200, and 717. Because the four variants share the same flight deck, all have the same pilot type rating. Today all variants are available as corporate jets. U.S. Airways is the largest airline operator of A320 family of aircraft in North America with 240 as of December 2012. Technically, the name A320 only refers to the original mid-sized aircraft, but it is often informally used to indicate any of the A318 A319 A320 A321 family. All variants are able to be ETOPS, Extended Range Twin Engine Operational Performance Standards, certified.
A320.
The A320 series has two variants, the A320-100 and A320-200. Only 21 A320-100s were produced. These aircraft, the first to be manufactured, were only delivered to Air Inter, later acquired by Air France, and British Airways, as a result of an order from British Caledonian Airways made prior to its acquisition by British Airways. Compared to the A320-100, the primary changes on A320-200 are wingtip fences and increased fuel capacity for increased range. Indian Airlines used its first 31 A320-200s with double bogie main landing gear for airfields with poor runway condition which a single bogie main gear could not manage. Typical range with 150 passengers for the A320-200 is about 3,300 mi, 6,150 kilometers. It is powered by two CFM56-5s or IAEV 2500s with thrust ratings between 113 to 120 kilonewtons, 25,400 to 27,000 pound forces. The lowest speed an A320 can fly is approximately 207 km per hour. A total of 3,363 of the A320 model have been delivered, with 2,942 remaining on order as of June 2013. The direct Boeing competitor is the 737-800.
A321.
The Airbus A321 is a stretched first derivative of the standard A320. The variant was launched in 1988, when the A320 began operations. Compared with the A320, the A321's major change is the stretched fuselage, which is lengthened by 6.94 meters, 22 feet 9 in. The A321 is the largest of the A320 family. This is achieved by adding a front plug immediately forward of wing 4.27 m, 14 feet 0 in, and a 2.67 m, 8 feet 9 in, rear plug. To maintain performance, double-slotted flaps were included, in addition to increasing the wing area by 4 m2, 43 square feet, to 128 m2, 1,380 square feet. Other minor modifications were made to accommodate the A321-100's 9,600 kilograms, 21,200 pounds, increase in maximum takeoff weight to 83,000 kilograms, 183,000 pounds. The maiden flight of the first of two prototypes came on March 11, 1993. The A321-100 entered service in 1994. The basic A321-100 features a reduction in range compared to the A320 as extra fuel tankage was not added to the initial design to compensate for the extra weight. To overcome this, Airbus launched the heavier and longer-range A321-200 development in 1995, which has a full passenger transcontinental U.S. range. This is achieved through higher thrust engines, V2533A5 or CFM56-5B3, minor structural strengthening, and an increase in fuel capacity with the installation of one or two optional 2,990 790 US gal tanks in the rear underfloor hold. The additional fuel tankage increases the total fuel capacity of this model to 30,030 L, 7,930 US gal. These modifications also increased the maximum takeoff weight of the A321-200 to 93,400 kilograms, 206,000 pounds. This variant first flew in December 1996. Its direct competitors include the Boeing 757-200 and the 737-900-900
A319.
The A319 is a shortened, minimum change version of the A320. Also known as the A320 M7, it is 3.73 meters, 12 feet 3 in, shorter than the A320. 4 frames 4 of the wing and 3 frames after the wing were removed. This allows the number of emergency exits to be reduced to 6. With virtually the same fuel capacity as the A320-200, and fewer passengers, the range with 124 passengers in a 2-class configuration extends to 6,650 kilometers, 3,519 mi, or 6,850 kilometers, 3,700 mi, with the sharklets. 4 propulsion options available on the A319 are the 23,040 pound force, 102.5 kilonewtons, V2522A5 and 24,800 pound force, 110 kilonewtons, V2527MA5 from IAE, or the 22,000 pound force, 98 kilonewtons, CFM56-5 bytes per hour and 27,000 pound force, 120 kilonewtons, CFM56-5B7. Although identical to those of the A320, these engines are derated because of the A319's lower MTOW. The A319 was developed at the request of Stephen Upvorhazy, the former president and CEO of ILFC, according to the New York Times. The A319's launch customer, in fact, was ILFC, which had placed an order for 6 A319s by 1993. Anticipating further orders by Swissair and Alitalia, Airbus decided to launch the program on June 10, 1993. Final assembly of the first A319 began on March 23, 1995.
A319CJ.
The A319CJ is the corporate jet version of the A319. It incorporates removable extra fuel tanks which are installed in the cargo compartment, and an increased service ceiling of 12,500 m, 41,000 feet. Range with 8 passengers payload and the standard for auxiliary fuel tanks is 6,000 nautical miles, 11,100 kilometers. Upon resale, the aircraft can be reconfigured as a standard A319 by removing its extra tanks and corporate cabin outfit, thus maximizing its resale value. It is also known as the ACJ, or Airbus Corporate Jet. The aircraft seats up to 39 passengers but may be outfitted by the customers into any configuration. Tyrolean Jet Service and FG GmbH & Company KG and Reliance Industries are among its users. The A319CJ competes with other corporate jets such as the Gulfstream V, the Boeing 737-700 based Boeing Business Jet, BBJ, and Bombardier's Global Express. It is powered by the same engine types as the A320. The A319CJ was used by the Escadron de Transport, d'Entraînement et de Calibration, which is in charge of transportation for France's officials, and also by the Flugbereitschaft of the German Air Force for transportation of Germany's officials. An ACJ serves as a presidential or official aircraft of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Brazil, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Germany, Italy, Malaysia, Thailand, Turkey, Ukraine and Venezuela.
A318.
The Airbus A318 is the smallest member of the Airbus A320 family. The A318 carries up to 132 passengers and has a maximum range of 3,100 mi, 5,700 kilometers, 3,600 miles. The aircraft entered service in July 2003 with Frontier Airlines, and shares a common type rating with all other Airbus A320 family variants, allowing existing A320 family pilots to fly the aircraft without the need for further training. It is the largest commercial aircraft certified by the European Aviation Safety Agency for steep approach operations, allowing flights at airports such as London City Airport. Relative to other Airbus A320 family variants, the A318 has sold in only small numbers, with total orders for only 81 aircraft placed as of December 31, 2012.
Freighter.
A program to convert A320 and A321 aircraft into freighters was set up by Airbus Freighter Conversion GmbH. Airframes would be converted by EADS EFW in Dresden, Germany, and Zhukovsky, Russia. The launch customer ECAP signed a firm contract on July 16, 2008 to convert 30 of ECAP's passenger A320 per A321s into A320 per A321 P2F, passenger to freighter. However, on June 3, 2011, Airbus announced all partners would end the passenger to freighter program, citing high demand for used airframes for passenger service.
Operators.
As of July 2013, 5,170 Airbus A320 family aircraft, all variants, remained in commercial service. This includes 47 A318, 1,263 A319, 3,063 A320, and 797 A321 aircraft.
Orders and deliveries.
Data through end of March 2014.
Accidents and incidents.
For the entire A320 family there have been 59 aviation occurrences, including 23 hull loss accidents with a total of 782 fatalities as of April 2012. There have been 50 incidents of glass cockpit blackout.
Specifications.
Source: Airbus, airliners.net, Pratt & Whitney.
Engines.